We're going to get started off. Thanks for joining. This is your daily situation brief for Indigenous communities in Canada. This briefing is going to be is recorded, and it will be available on our YouTube, our Patreon, our homepage. It's the first thing on hazardscape.com. And on our Patreon, if you're a member, you'll get the briefing document that I'm using to refer to, as well as there's a post on our Patreon with all of the links to all of the maps and everything that I pull up on the screen here. So I want to just start off with talking about floods right now. Really kind of temperatures are expected to remain near zero through mid-April in Manitoba. It is delaying a little bit of the start of the snowmelt, increasing the potential for a very rapid concentrated spring runoff. We're already seeing a lot of potential imminent threat flooding going on in communities like Pegasus. And then I picked up that the Emergency Management Organization for Manitoba continues. They're working with local authorities, First Nations, partners. They're trying to provide guidance and support for them to prepare and respond to the spring floods. But the province's spring flood outlook indicates that the Interlake region, which Pegasus is part of, that's facing the increased flood risk due to large amounts of snow. So it's a bit of a delayed melt and an increased likelihood of rapid spring runoff. So communities near rivers or low-lying areas should monitor the Manitoba Hydrologic Forest Center and have their emergency operations center teams at least established and identified. And then I would go as far as starting to communicate to members and homeowners and families, elders, that they want to start considering their grab and go bags. So I'll put for flooding, this is the flood risk map for Canada. So in that area in Manitoba of Pegasus, I only had one coffee this morning. This is the community, the First Nation there. So you can see the red is 1 in 25 year flooding. And the sort of orange to yellow is kind of in that 1 in 100, 1 in 200 year flooding, which does not mean that it will flood once every 25 years or once every 100 years. It just means that for a 1 in 100 year flood, every year there's a 1% chance that it will flood to that level, to that return period. So if you are in that area, and if you do want to link to this map, you can find it on our Patreon. You can go look at your own community and kind of see where the water would go. And you can see if your home is in it. Thanks for all the likes, you guys. Thanks for all the support on this. And, when you look across Canada, there's some, there's a lot of flood potential. And so it's really important as you get into this time of year that you're working with your emergency management coordinators, you're working with your on reserve or in community coordinators with the jurisdiction to get the best data possible that'll indicate what the risk level is for the time period. Because if you're working with Indigenous Services Canada through the Emergency Management Assistance Program for funding, they've got a clause in the EMAP policy that says they won't disperse response funds until there's an imminent threat. And the terminology of imminent doesn't have a good definition. What a First Nation considers imminent is not the same as what ISK considers imminent. And in my experience, ISK has not necessarily relied on information that's coming from the community, like water guardians or land guardians or any guardians that are out in the community. They won't consider First Nations knowledge, right? They won't consider that. All they're looking at is the data and the stats and the monitors. And an imminent threat is very subjective. So that's just a bit of caution if you're going to ISK for any for money. All the red marks, that's the red is the 1 in 25 year flood map. So, for example, in at this river, if a 1 in 25 year flood were to happen, that's where the water is projected to flow. So, technically, if we went really crazy here, if Canada, if every single water body and floodplain flooded in Canada at the same time at a 1 in 25 year level, this is what would be covered in water. So, you know, the people out there are going to say, "Oh, that'll never happen." Well, right? They've said a lot. Fort McMurray would never burn down. Jasper would never burn down. Fox Lake and Little Red would never burn down. So, it's just interesting to kind of take a look at this map. So moving on to wildfires. So wildfire season, again, it's kind of getting off to a relatively quiet start, but the lingering drought and warm summer is gonna it could tip the scales. Experts are saying. No, it's happening right now. The earth filters water. Yes, the earth does filter water, but the earth can only filter the water so quickly. And when you're at a level of drought that we're seeing in Canada, when the ground is so dry, that water runs off that dry ground so quickly, right? And then you've got to consider all of the wildfires we've had. There's so much land that the soil is still eroded from. It's still, doesn't retain much. Thanks, Nunavut. Cheers. Where you have wildfires and we're dealing with blizzard. Yeah, I've got the blizzard. I'll go back, but here's the where was it? There it is. There's all the weather warnings in Canada right now. So you're absolutely right. Look at all the blizzard and snow warnings up there, and I'll get into that in a sec. I want to finish my wildfire report here. So basically, the stormy winter weather has left pretty deep snowpack. It's lingering across a large part of the country, especially in areas farther north, where we're not really seeing too many signs of unusual activity through April. And that's from Richard Carr. He's a wildfire research analyst with Natural Resources Canada in Edmonton. He did report that there are some exceptions, such as southern BC and southern Alberta and southwestern Saskatchewan, where if you look in southern BC, you can see a couple of wildfire starts have already occurred in the last couple of weeks. And those areas have already seen those conductive conditions emerge, right? He also has his eye on drought-stricken New Brunswick and areas through Hudson's Bay. And if you look at New Brunswick, you can already see they've already had some wildfire starts, and then Northwest Territories, where there was lower than normal snowfall. So Canada is heading into this season in very uncharted territory, coming off 3 consecutive severe fire years. Last season was the second worst, behind 2023, when wildfires burned through 150,000 square kilometers of land. So within an Indigenous community context, over the last 40 years, Indigenous communities have made up 42% of wildland fire evacuations. Okay, that's a huge number. And in 2025, over 45,000 people from 73 nations were displaced from their homes and communities due to wildfire. So I checked in to see what BC was doing, because they're kind of at in Western Canada at the higher risk. They've got about 2,400 people have applied to be seasonal firefighters, and it's given some special urban wildfire training to more than 1,700 fire departments. So BC's really focused on making sure that the structural municipal firefighters have the ability to fight urban interface wildfires if that fire comes from the forest land, the wild land, into an urban setting. And that includes some First Nations. And Environment Canada expects 2026 to be one of the hottest years on record. So yeah, we're looking, most of these are being held or are reported. Yellow is being held. Blue is under control. but still 12.7 hectares. That's a decent size, for this time of year. That's a decent size. And then getting into New Brunswick, right? They've still got some out of control. They might be in areas where they're really small, 0.1 hectare, but they're in areas where they're just not going to be, fighting those fires too much. So again, as we progress through the spring and summer, you're going to see this map really light up, and we'll be tracking it every day along with the drought conditions that were just released in Canada. So you can get a quick look here at the drought conditions. There was some easing of the drought through, parts of Manitoba, Saskatchewan in the north, especially, even a little bit in Northwest Territories. But that's not going to last long. That's just the heavy snowpack that we've received. It's going to dissipate. But you can see right now where Kamloops is in BC compared to the fire map. You can see those drought areas are already starting to light up. So anywhere that you see the darker brown, those are going to be the areas to watch off the hop for fire activity or grass fire activity. And then as we move east, again, look at New Brunswick, right? And you look at where they're at with their fire. So definitely Labrador, New Brunswick, southeast of in Quebec, those are all going to be areas to watch out for. And then we get to that sort of central to north part of Manitoba that had such a bad year last year. That's going to dry up once this kind of snowpack melts and the flooding recedes, if it does turn into flooding. So when we look at current weather conditions, we've got some weather warnings, and like our Nunavut friend was mentioning, there's quite a few blizzards still going on despite the floods and the weather. Did 25 pounds in my back? I don't know what that means. Oh, you did your fitness walk out on the park. Yeah, so you were saying you're in the middle left. So that would be like in here. Are you Baker Lake? Is that where you're mentioning? Blizzard conditions with poor visibility and snow blowing. Yeah. These are all going to see blizzard warnings. Yeah, okay, Baker Lake. Yeah. So it's crazy, right? Then we've got in this western Alberta, there's a snowfall warning, 20 to 35 centimeters in Greenview. Southern Ontario, we're seeing a rainfall warning, heavy rain at times. Oh, and they're saying the ground is already pretty saturated. Ground already near saturation has little ability to absorb the rainfall. And second rainfall. So I'm going to check the flooding conditions for that area right now too. Second rain event. That's good, Vanish. You got to keep exercise, bro. You'll clear up by tomorrow. Yeah, and then you'll be back to you can walk out of a blizzard no problem, I imagine. It's pretty routine. So let's look at just a little bit slightly north of Toronto. Right? If we look at the flood hazard map. So there's, I mean, if groundwater is already at saturation and you're gonna see that heavy rainfall, like anywhere you see a lot of the red and the yellow, even in part of the green, probably more the green, that's where you could see some of the water pooling up. Now they're not calling for, let's just go back to where that is. Did they give a measurement of rain here? Yeah, water will likely pool on roads, low-lying areas. Please continue to monitor alerts. So if you're looking in that area, so if we zoom in here, when they say pooling of water, that's where you can kind of go to this map and project where a lot of that pooling will happen if you're interested, right? And it's just kind of handy to know, especially if you're going to buy a house or something. Well, I'm not gonna get into it. I'm gonna finish up my report, and then I can go look in and on specifics. Unless there's some sort of thing going on there right now. But I want to finish up with a little bit more on the Manitoba flooding, and then the ongoing water crisis, which is in Kashuan. I think that's how you say it. So they're still displaced from their homes. In late April, they were expected to install the new cartridge filters at the water treatment plant. That was going to prevent a parasite called Cryptosporidium. If you're a water person, you can say that better than me. But there's still 1,800 displaced residents from the nation living in hotels across Ontario. And there was, as of early March, there was 90 outbreak-related cases. So quite devastating to them. Going back, I wanted to do a little bit more. I've got a little bit more update on the flood in, or potential flooding in Peguis. Chief Stan Bird had said residents of Interlake community may be running out of time to pile thousands of sandbags around homes because runoff is expected by April 19th. So that's only 5 days, 4.5 days from now. So they're sandbagging around homes and buildings before severe spring flooding is expected to overflow the area in the coming days. The most recent flood update said not only is Peguis expected to see a flood at least as high as what it experienced in 2014, when about 200 people were evacuated, but with a quicker melt, they could see 2022 levels where hundreds were evacuated, and it was a $245 million in damages. Well, these are, yes, the blue are lakes, but the red and the yellow to the lighter yellow and green, those are return periods for floods. So red is a 1 in 25 year return flood where you get into this sort of lighter yellow. That's about a moderate risk 1 to 100, 1 to 200 year flood. And then as of a snowstorm swept through southern Manitoba, it also hit the Interlake region particularly hard, making the situation worse. The nation got 25 centimeters of snow. Hydrologist Ian Halkett, who's advising Peguis, said the storm brought more snow and further delayed the melt. The longer spring is delayed, the more likely the melt will be sudden. And it is going to warm up in the next 5 days. That's why they're calling for that heavy inundation. So as of yesterday, there were hundreds of residents working around the clock filling and distributing sandbags. Peguis First Nation has dealt with several floods in recent decades. The community was relocated in 1907 from good farm land close to Winnipeg to its current location on a flood-prone river delta under a surrender of land to the federal government that was later deemed illegal. So Canada put them here. Canada better compensate and do what is needed, because like a lot of First Nations that got removed, forced out of their nation area, their traditional lands, and the government relocated them to these flood areas. Canada needs to step up and not spare one penny, especially with all the money going to Ukraine and other countries. Canada needs to be stepping up here for them and making sure that not one person or one home gets flooded. I don't know if that's possible, but they should be making every single effort. Quickly, what else? Not much has changed from the report yesterday. We do have a new team of Indigenous women who are going to focus on strictly serving other Indigenous women in Winnipeg City Center, the Indigenous Women Support Team. It's an 8-person team from the province. established to create a web of supports for Indigenous women, girls, and Two-Spirit people through Manitoba. So that's a really great example of how, built by nations for the nation, they can stand up these types of response teams, whether it's for mental health, public safety, community safety. It's the same as incident management and emergency response, right? So that's really good news for them. Going over to kind of, where we're seeing a lot of wind with that blizzard up in Nunavut, you can see the wind driving up there. That's in the, hitting up to the 70 kilometer, 80, 90 kilometer an hour winds in over the Hudson Bay. And then you kind of get into other areas where it's just, underneath Igloolik, south of Igloolik, coming off Rankin Inlet. If we look at where Baker Lake is, really, really windy and just driving those blizzard conditions that we're seeing. So yeah, the rest of the country looks pretty good. Luckily, the wind, it's not too bad in southern BC where some of those fires are being held or are under control. I think there was someone wanted me to look up where they were. If they're still on, it was Equor. I don't know if you're still on there, Equor Mail. But in terms of preparedness, if your community is, either starting its preparedness activity or is starting to see risk develop from a natural hazard or something like that, this is where you want to be contacting your nation's administration to find out who your emergency management coordinator is. What are they doing to stand up these sort of incident response or incident management teams? What is that structure going to look like? And are they going to need supports? Right? Is your community going to need volunteers? And at the very least, the nation should be able to answer that for you as they start to plan and prepare, right? Especially when you're getting into those areas where there's already some flooding being seen, like in Manitoba, and fires in BC. So if you have any questions, let me know. I will go check out, just for my own interest, I'll check out that one community. Oh, this is the other one. I wanted to double check the fire smoke. Nothing. Fire smoke right now is pretty tame. Is fire tech exercising my brain or muscles? Probably both. It's exercising both. Because your muscles are getting a workout and your brain's getting all that healthy chemicals kicked up, and all your it's helping with your mental health and everything. Okay, I'm gonna go to that one community this person put in here. I don't know if they're still on here, but I will still honor the request and check it. I just have to remember how to spell it. WAHNA PITAE. I just got to figure out where there. Yes, your fitness walk will boost your moods for sure. Oh, you're kind of in Ontario, above Sudbury. Well, let's just go in here. Actually, no, I'll put on my Indigenous lands map, and then that will help me find out where they are. So it looks like they're going to be... Oh, there it is. So they're in that... if you're still on, you're in that that rain area, in that rain warning area. which if I can find you on the flood map, because that's the thing, the flood map, the reserves are not well identified on here, and you can't really turn them on. You'd go to satellite imagery, but it's still going to find Sudbury. There it is. So that nation, oh, there it is. So you can kind of see how this map is handy for flooding, right? Where's the community? Oh, there's the community. So look at there is a flood, 1 in 25 year flood. It's almost like a quarter of the community almost, especially at their campground. So, if they were to experience flooding, you can kind of see some of the areas where that water is going to pool up. And if their ground saturation is at its maximum in this area as well, with the rain warning that's coming out, yeah, they might see some pooling water, a little bit of overland flooding. So that's what I would be checking out right now if I was the emergency management coordinator. I would be assessing that risk. And if there is a high, medium to high risk, then, activating whatever team they need to take care of that, or communicate to the community what the risk is and what people can start doing. Not saying it's going to happen. That's just an example of how this workflow with situational awareness goes, right? You want to kind of zoom in, use all of this data and information to help make your decision. Okay. And then from there, you want to look at, standing up your team. So if you don't yet have a team, and what I mean by that is I'm going to bring up an example from our live stream for our wildfire simulation. So if you weren't able to join us, I'm going to bring up this example because you can download this off of our Patreon as well as a template. I'll rearrange it so everyone can see if you're watching. Let's go zoom out a little bit. There we go. So when you're in a situation where you're looking to start up an emergency operations center or some sort of incident management or incident response team, one of the first things that you want to get sorted out, if you don't have it, or this should already be sorted out mostly in your plan, is your emergency operations center team or incident command team, whatever you want to call it. It's up to you. With, if there's potential for evacuation, your emergency social services team. And that should be something that is well known to the community. Something either on your Facebook, or if you've got an app, or wherever it gets posted at your store's bulletin board. These should be well known. I don't necessarily recommend, putting contact information for every individual. If you can in your community, it's always good to set up like a call center type of thing, and where you can have, 2 or 3 people sitting in the EOC, and their job is just to take phone calls to one number. So I always recommend setting up a call center so one person isn't constantly getting inundated, and all communications go through that. I know it's hard on reserve to do that. It's hard in a community to do that because everyone's got your number, but you really want to you really want to focus all of the members' calls to one place so you can get that information to one person so it can all be tracked and considered. If it's going through text to individual family members splattered throughout the EOC, things will get lost, things won't get dealt with. You can't track all of that info coming in. Is it true they only hire Aboriginals on reservation fire line? No, I don't think that's true, because there's a lot of Munyao on reserves fighting fires from the province. And you also want to consider, kind of what is your daily schedule, your operational rhythm. It's called technically, maybe you just want to call it your agenda, but it's really your shift, the shift for the day, right? What is a day going to look like for your emergency operations center? And you want that rhythm to stay the same as much as possible every day, because if you're getting into a flood response or a fire response that could last a couple of weeks, then you want the schedule to be the same so everybody knows when they're going to get information, especially chief and council or elected officials, because they're the hungry ones for information, right? And they're the ones that you want to keep fed, I like to say. So if they know that every morning there's going to be a briefing come out at, say, 8 a.m. and then an evening briefing at 4 p.m., then they can get into a routine themselves where they make time available to be at the morning meeting. They will take that information, talk to the media, talk to ministers, talk to ISK at the political level, talk to members, answer questions. Then they can come back for the, they can have questions ready throughout the day for the operational briefing, and they can ask questions at that briefing. And it gets them in a routine, and it helps to keep them kind of out of your way as a director. And that's really where you want to get to, having chief and council sort of act as the incident commander or the EOC director. If you can help it, you don't want them there. You don't want them taking on that role, because they need to deal with media, politicians, high-level government, and membership. So these are, a couple of things that you want to get organized with right away. And then, of course, through your incident or response planning cycle, you want to get into, developing your plans, right? Your courses of action. And this example here that we're doing in our wildfire simulation is more for an evacuation. This is kind of a hybrid of a operational and a tactical plan. But in your tactical plans, if anyone's familiar with the planning P from Incident Command System, you want to, that's a good example of a good planning cycle if you need a reference tool. But your community can come up with whatever you want as a planning cycle. If you want to stick to incident command, I can bring up an example of the planning P. And if you want, on our Patreon, we also, I did a live stream there with P Post that you can access. It's a training video on P Post. But with the planning P, it's just basically a process of the incident or event is at the bottom. Whoops, let me go back, and because I wanted to zoom in. Thank you for the support, you guys. Then you've got notification, initial response. You have your incident brief, initial meeting with unified command, if that exists, or just meeting of command. Then the incident commander develops the objectives, the initial objectives, which incident event to development of objectives. If it's like a house fire, that this whole thing can happen, in 20 minutes, in half an hour. Why does that keep doing that? right? This whole thing could happen in 20 minutes at the hood of a truck. And then you get into your command and general staff meetings, tactics meetings, planning meeting, incident action plan approval, ops briefing, and you assess. So this whole cycle for a house fire could happen in like 2 minutes, right? That's where training comes into play. In fact, if it's a house fire, you don't even go through this because it's so routine, you just know what to do. The colors, they would just identify different types of meetings, I think. I don't know if in this one, I don't think these ones, the color matters. I think it's just a way to separate. If you look at other models, it could just mean like the green. What's the same in the green? Oh, they've got they've done this one in phases. So phase 1 is understand the situation. Phase 2 is establish objectives. 3 is develop the plan. It's just another way to organize it for some groups. You can see like the one that ICS Canada uses is initial response is gray, and then all the other is just blue. Thank you. I hope you have a good morning. Hope everyone has a good day too. Thank you for that. Good question about the colors. That's always important, right? And that's the confusing thing is with all of these, you just want one, right? There should be one for the entire planet. So everyone understands the one, but everyone likes to make up their own. So as I was saying, yeah, this cycle could happen in, it could also take 8 hours. Why, Google, go away. This cycle could also take a full day, right? When I bring back up the operational rhythm example, that planning piece cycle might happen between 8 to 4 if it's for a big disaster. That's why getting into that operational rhythm is so important. So everybody knows when they're going to get the info, when they need to collect the information from their chair in the EOC or the role of the emergency, and then when it has to get into plans to be turned into a plan and approved by the incident commander. That could take half a day, it could take a day. It just depends on the size of the response. But these are some of the tools that help with that planning in the incident command system. So if you have any other questions, let me know. Those are just some very common plan elements that nations can undertake as soon as the risk is high. Okay, and that, when I say high risk, I mean either high risk of something happening. Yeah, this is GIS. Yes. This one is ArcGIS by Esri. And so all the red, brown, purple, green, those are indigenous lands. And then you kind of see these, I'll flash them here. These are weather warnings that are flashing. So blizzard up in Nunavut, snowfall warning on western Alberta. And then we got rain, and this one was second rain event. So rain event, lots of rain right now in Ontario, Quebec, in the southern parts. And then all the red here are reserves. And then if we go to this one, this is where there's been some new fire startups. The blue ones in Alberta, those were all from late 2025 or early 2026. The ones in BC and New Brunswick are all new. And then the one up in Yukon is new as well, but they're all being held with the exception of the 2 in New Brunswick, which are still listed as out of control. I don't know why. They're not very big though. So yeah, we'll be here every day, 8:30 a.m. Mountain Standard Time to do these situational briefs. They are being recorded, so they'll go up on our YouTube, up on our homepage. It'll be direct on the Hazardscape homepage. So if you save the Hazardscape website link to your phone's home page, you can kind of access it like an app and get these recordings if you have missed it. And then on our Patreon, you can also download our daily situation brief, which is just a briefing of big events going on within Indigenous communities. So here we're still tracking the water crisis in Cache, where Pegasus flooding. We've got the mental health crisis that was just declared. Floods, wildfire infrastructure, policy funding, news, weather watches, community safety resilience, and then some quick information and our sources. So this is yesterday's briefing is on our Patreon right now with this similar report. You can download it for your nation if you need it. And if you need this one, it will be up fairly soon as well. And we'll be here every day, 8:30 a.m. Mountain Standard Time to do this. Also tomorrow, if you are in the area or you've got time, we've got Stacy who's going to be on doing a webinar through Zoom. So you'll be able to attend that. He's going to be talking about Indigenous culture and emergency management and how nations and municipalities can work together, how governments with First Nations can work together better. He's also going to provide some information to municipalities on how they can engage with First Nations within emergency management and vice versa, and how they can support the culture and just give them a little bit better understanding of what it's like to be on reserve and dealing with, all the things that they have to deal with. So that's tomorrow. You have to register through our Zoom account. If you do want to register, I can put the link in the comments if you're on here. It's on our Patreon. It's on a lot of our social media. If you're interested in attending that. And I think Terrence is still going to open. Terrence Bear from Always Moving Forward, an Indigenous youth initiative, is going to open for us. I think he's still going to open for us. So I just put the link in the comments to this Zoom call tomorrow at 10 o'clock Mountain Standard Time. It will go till about noon. So check that out. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you tomorrow.